Hi everyone, our journal page today, and it's going to be very simple in the terms that it's only going to have 2 layers. Now I'm working in this paper bag journal that I made, and I want to start by making a background with all this faux handmade paper. I made a video how to make them. It's so simple. It's just printer paper, all kinds of stuff like dried leaves and dried tea leaves and stamping, and then covering it with the backing of a paper napkin. I will put a link below for the video that's showing how to make them. And I've got several here, and I just want to, well, I'm going to tear them to pieces and construct some interesting background. Now they have lots of texture, so it's a little bit difficult, but I hope it will be interesting. So I'm just going to take pieces of these papers and use white glue. So it's very simple. Only thing is that it will you need patience and to wait for all to dry. So basically this is it. That's the first layer, and here we go. I'm putting it down, and I'm also going to put a white glue on top. It just soaks out the paper, and it's easier to make a collage. It's not that it needs sealing, it's just easier this way. So I've got one down. Let's take from another paper which is in different shade, so it would be more interesting. And let's see, I think I will keep the ones that have straight edges to places like this. And let's see, I want variation in the color. I don't want the same pieces over and over again. And I'm also overlapping. I think it's more interesting this way. But basically this is quite random, just tearing off pieces and gluing them down. Now if you don't want to use something like that, you can use whatever, painty papers or scrapbook paper, whatever you have. I've made in the past other art journal pages that were constructed of just tearing up different kind of papers to begin an interesting background. Just moved a little bit. Okay, here we go. So another paper. Let's see, here is another one with different color. It's going to be quite the same for for a time. Just putting down pieces. I'm going to do several so you can see what I'm talking about, and then I will finish this first layer off camera, because it's not so interesting watching me glue piece by piece. Now when all the glue, there is a lot of glue here, and when it's still wet, it's like all the details disappear, but once it's dry, everything shows up again. So I'm not concerned that I can't see the details of each paper. And sometimes it's hard to tear them apart. But here we go. So just going easy about it and switching between the different papers to construct this background. Let's see, I also got this one, and it doesn't have to go like this. You can glue with whichever direction you like. It really doesn't matter, up to you. And if you don't like tearing papers and you are much more into straight edges, then go for it. Just decide what you like and create a background with the papers you've got. So let's see. The only thing that I do try to do is alternate between the pieces, so I won't have a solid color all the way. I need interest. Here we go. Let's do this one. I think this type of thing helps your background to look more organic when it's torn and it's not really calculated where everything is going. You just go with the flow of the tearing of the pages. So as you can see, just putting down all kinds of paper. So I'm going to continue doing this all over. I'm doing a double spread, and once I'm covering everything here, it needs to be completely dry before I attempt to work the next layer. Although it's, well, when we'll get to it, I'll explain the next layer, because it needs to work on top of all this texture. And I'm really excited about sharing with you this technique, because it opens a lot of different options to making mixed media, art journaling, how you can put stuff on all this texture. So I'm going to continue gluing pieces and I'll be back. I'm back. So finished covering my double spread, and it, well, I'm not sure about needing it to dry, because I will need to glue on top of it, but for right now I'm moving it aside and we are continuing to the second layer. And for doing anything on top of all this texture, here is what we are going to do. We are going to stencil. Only you can't stencil on all this texture. What we are going to do is take the backing of the white backing of a paper napkin, and we are going to stencil it on top of it. Now I prefer to use the backing of paper napkin, because when I glue it, first of all, it's more flexible on all the texture, and once it's dry, it disappears into the background. If you are gluing it right and with enough glue, then it disappears and you don't have white spots. Another option is to use rice paper, but I know I can get it in my cheap store. I know that it's not available everywhere. and not all rice paper is created equal. There are ones that are so thin that you just can't stencil on top of them. Now it's not only stenciling, you can also stamp and do the same thing on top of all this texture. Now another option is tissue paper, and once again, not all tissue paper is created equal. Some of them are more flexible, some of them are more transparent than others, and even when I buy in my cheap store, some brands are better than others, so that's why I prefer to use this. It's cheap, it's available, it's flexible, and it will get transparent once it's dry. So how do we stencil on the backing of a paper napkin? I'm going to take a black acrylic paint. Now it doesn't have to be, but that's what I'm going for this page. And I'm going to take a makeup sponge. Where is my makeup sponge that I've prepared? Here we go. Okay, so you're taking the stencil and you of course decide whatever you want on your what element you want. I'm going to do this butterflies, and probably I will do them several times because I want to have options once I glue them to the page. Now the most important thing is to dab your makeup sponge. It's like you are pushing inside the acrylic paint. You don't want it coated with acrylic paint, especially when you're working on the backing of paper napkin. This is very delicate, so it's better to dab and almost have nothing than to have more too much on it. So, and I'm also, because I'm making sure I have almost nothing on top, then I'm pushing I'm having more pressure on the makeup sponge when stenciling than with other projects. And sometimes it will look like a dark gray. It's okay. It's better that it would look like this and then go over it again and then tearing apart or fluting it. So this is quite a delicate process to do, although once you get it, it just goes very quickly. And I'm always preparing ahead. I have all kinds of backing of paper napkins that are already stamped or stenciled, so I have them to work with, and I'm just continuing stenciling. And as I said, you can also stamp. It doesn't have to be stenciling, as long as you're making sure you don't have lots of wet stuff. With stamping, it's not a problem because you are using an ink pad, but with stenciling on top of this with acrylic paint, you need to be careful. Now of course you can stencil whatever you want, whatever design you want, and with whatever color. For this time I just want the black, and I think I'll flip it over so I will have more of the same, only in the other direction. Now this is not all the things that I want to put on my page. This is just a part of it. I've already made in advance the other stencils that are going to be my, well, focal image on top of the background. Just think of all the options you can do and stencil on top of this and have fun with it. You can make like your own paper napkin. So here are the other ones that I've already prepared. I've put a a plastic bag underneath just so it won't transfer to my desk. I've stenciled this. This is the stencil I've used. I've used this one and this, so I will have options. I try to use most of the space, and my focal image is this. All these stencils are bought from AliExpress, and here is my focal image. I masked the parts that I didn't want to show. I just wanted this figure, and here she's you can't see it because it's masked. She's like holding some kind of goblet or chalice, and I just wanted her. So I've got all this to work with on top of my first layer on all the texture, and of course to take apart I'm using a very small brush with a little bit of water and just going around whatever I want to take out of the napkin. I find that it's better than using scissors when you have these torn edges. Then the paper napkin just fades into the background seamlessly. While when you have the straight edges from scissors, it's however I try to glue it down, it always shows. So that's, for me, that's the better way to take out part of the napkin. And gently I'm just taking this out. And of course I can also take excess if it didn't if there's too much of it. So I'm just doing like this, taking the image out very gently. And here we go. I need to take some of the excess here in between the hands without tearing. So, and also like here, if I want to take just one part, again I will just go with the brush around the image I want and take it out. So now I will have all kinds of pieces to play on my page. Like if I want this middle one that I've stenciled, I'm going around it and just taking it out. So I'm going to take all these parts apart, and then we are going to start gluing it to the background. I'll be back. And I'm back, and I have got all the elements I want on my page, and I'm starting with my focal image. Now, why did I say it's better to be dry before continuing to the next layer? Is because now that it's still wet, I hope you can see it. Now that it's still wet, the moment I will lay this down, it will stick and I can't move it. So while it's still wet, I need to be very careful where I'm putting it because I can't play with the placement. I am quite sure where I want this piece to go, so I'm going to go about it and not wait for everything to be dry. And what's most important in gluing this kind of thing to this kind of background with lot of texture is that you have a lot of glue. You don't want to miss a spot, because if you miss a spot, not only you will have an air bubble, you will have like a white bubble left, and it's really hard to make it go away later on. So I'm now just adding more glue to my page. I know it looks horrible, but then when it dries, it's just worth it. So I'm making sure I have lots and lots of glue, fresh white glue, so I won't have any problem. And I'm just going to gently place my focal image, and of course it will get wrinkled, but I don't care. So very gently placed it, and now I'm going back again into the glue. Now my white glue, most of the time I use it as is from what I buy in the cheap store, but sometimes it's too thick, and then I add water just so it would be easier to work with. There is no measurement, because each time I buy this, the consistency is different. You just need to see what works for you. If you feel that your glue is too thick, then add water, just a little bit at a time. Now use a very soft brush and flat brush, and when you are going on top of the napkin, it's better to work from the inside to the outside and use the flat of the brush. It needs to slide, not drag the paper napkin. And if you feel it's dragging, that means you don't have enough glue on your brush. Don't be afraid to have a lot of glue. Yes, it will take a lot of time to dry, but it would be worth it, and it will disappear. I need to be very careful here with the hands. I think it's in place, and I can move on. So the only thing that was planned is to have this focal image and then build around her some interest. So that's why I made all kinds of little pieces that I can play with. I knew I wanted some branches, vine, whatever, to be on my page, but now it's just playing with elements and seeing what works for me. So I think I will put this here. It's also recommended even to overlap the pieces. Sometimes it will be more white where they are overlapping, but when you're overlapping between the elements, then it's more again more organic, more a part of the same theme, the same picture for that matter. Now if in this matter, like it's overlapping here, it's hard to see what's going on. You've got two pieces of paper napkin, you have lots of glue, you need to wait for it to dry completely. When it's dry, if you feel that it's not good enough, I can always go in with black permanent marker and go over the lines that I feel need more definition. So don't be afraid with overlapping and lots of glue. So I'm now just going to build all these layers, and we'll see where it gets me. Again, making sure I've got lots and lots of glue here for this piece. Part of it, if you can see, is sticking out of the edges, but I don't care. Right now I'm just gluing, building up my composition, and when everything will be dry I will trim the excess that I have here, and maybe I will have more. So I'm going to continue gluing down the pieces and I'll be back. Okay, so I finished gluing all the pieces. Now it's the hard part, is waiting for all this to dry. All the white that you see is where there is a lot of wet glue still, and it takes a lot of time. Now I'm not recommending using a heat tool, because some of them will just make the glue bubble instead of drying. So best is to let it be, or use something like a hair dryer that is giving out hot air instead of just heat, like a heat tool. So I'm going to let it be. I still want to go over the edges, trim the excess and maybe darken the edges, and we will see more what's going on once everything is dry. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Mostly it's dry. I hope you can see what's going on here. The lighting isn't great, but basically this is it. Now I decided on just these two layers, but you can keep going and add things to it. You can go with all kinds of pens, like Posca pens or jelly roll pens, and go and add details to all this. You have so much texture if you're doing something like that you can go and highlight all this with either dry brushing acrylic paint, or some like a gilding wax, rub and buff, so you can still build on top of it. I really like what's going on here. I like that it's simple and that it has so many details and texture in the back. So this is it for me. I hope you liked it. I hope you'll try your hand at stenciling on the back of a paper napkin and play with the pieces. Thank you for watching, and thank you for leaving me comments below. Don't forget, I will leave the link to the video how to make a faux handmade paper. Thank you. Bye for now.